Not on the air.
You wait until you say 5 o'clock.
Well, we'll wait for Alan.
You had to be having one hell of a wood stove from the fire. I mean, the thing must have been cracking.
Oh, or, like you said, if it was significant defect, either installation or manufacturing, it was only the first couple of days they had a fire. It doesn't take long. Little paralysis, you know,
Yeah.
at 400 or 500 degrees up there, it's going to dry everything right out and fire it off.
All right. Well, hopefully we're on air.
Yeah, he heard me. Excellent.
Well,
As if by magic.
all right, thanks for joining us. Happy New Year.
New Year.
Untitled Award, we have Bill Kennedy and Bill Taylor, fellow select board members. Nicole McStair, town administrator, and Alan Kreutz at the table, assistant to town administrator, taking notes. So we all know each other, but just in case, state your name when you have something to say, please. Tonight, we're gonna accept a bunch of money. And a nice donation and a grant, and then maybe name a couple roads. All right, shall we get started?
Yeah.
Is it a public hearing?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing pursuant to RSA 31:95-B, and that is acceptance of unanticipated monies.
Second.
Yeah. All right. All right.
Very straightforward. We had an anonymous donation of $1,849 to go towards the purchase of one of the 2 commercial coat racks that we need for the upper hall. The ones that we had before were in very rough shape. And a resident stepped forward and offered to help us with that, which we greatly appreciate.
How'd they come up with that number?
That's how much one of the racks cost.
It's actual cost.
That's its actual cost, yeah, as we ordered them.
I suspected as much.
Yeah. They're actually incredibly neat coat racks, so when we're not using them, they will fold up and can be pushed off to the side, like over where we store the chair racks and whatnot, so.
Okay, good.
It'll be nice. I mean, yeah, it's kind of unfortunate to have a coat rack out in the home when you don't need it there, because it's just a beautiful foyer entryway, so.
Comes with hangers?
It comes with built-in spots to hang things off of, so we don't have to worry about, you know, coat hangers coming and going.
Okay.
Yeah, they're very nice pieces.
Well, it's a very generous donation.
Yeah.
Sure.
And that's just one of the 2 racks?
One of the 2 racks, yeah. It's one for either side of it as you go up the stairs.
Would anyone like to step forward and buy the other one?
Going once?
I'll leave it at that.
That's a good ask. Would anybody prefer coat hooks? I'll accept this. All right, I'd make a motion that we accept the generous gift.
Any comments? I'll second that motion.
I asked her, sorry, other comments
That's okay.
besides coat hooks? Thanks. Seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay. All right, well, thanks for that. Thank you to the anonymous donor.
Okay, exit the public session.
Yep. And
I'll make the motion to exit the public hearing.
I'll second that one.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Done.
Really vote heavy
Yeah.
so far.
And then
More words and voting than there was.
a grant from the New Hampshire Council on the Arts.
Yes, turn this over to Ally.
So we submitted a grant application last summer for the purposes of restoring the upper hall piano, which is of significant historical and cultural value, especially to like the local contra dance history.
Mac would love it.
Yeah, he called it Johnny Trombley's piano, and that was his mentor. So the history goes back like several generations of very talented musicians. So we applied for this grant after being implored to do so by Lisa Sieverts of the Monadnock Folklore Society, and she couldn't be here tonight, but she is very pleased, as was I, to find out that we got the maximum grant of $20,000 to go towards the purposes of restoring the piano. So that was awesome. We found out about that was around Thanksgiving. But to formally accept, we need the following motion. Seth is the project manager for the project, so we need a motion for Seth McLean, Public Works Director, to be duly authorized to enter into contracts or agreements on behalf of the town of Peterborough with the state of New Hampshire, acting by and through the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, New Hampshire State Council on the Arts, and is further authorized to execute any documents on behalf of this municipality and may be, in his judgment, desirable or necessary to effect the purpose of this resolution.
So moved.
All right.
I'll second that.
Okay.
May I just, can we be reminded how much it will cost to restore that and who's paying it?
So the quote that we have from a gentleman in Massachusetts who specializes in restoring Chickering pianos is $40,000. So that's half of this grant. One of the conditions of the town applying for the grant is that the Monadnock Folklore Society does any needed fundraising to complete the restoration. So the town is contributing, resources in the form of staff time. But other than that, no tax dollars will be spent to restore the piano. So this will be done in collaboration with the Monadnock Folklore Society.
Now, is this a matching grant?
It is.
Effectively, yes.
So it's up to the Folklore Society to really get their act together.
Yes, but Lisa, I believe, she's applied for another grant, like the Folklore Society has applied. So because it's the town's piano, we had to submit for this grant specifically, but she's been actively looking for other sources so that we will have the full amount needed to get the work done.
Great. Again, another gift to the town, so.
Mhm.
Great. Any questions from anybody out there? Any piano players? Yes, Carol, you play piano.
I used to a long time ago, but that doesn't matter. Thanks for asking. The grant that the town got,
Yes.
does that have a time frame by which the Folklore Society has to raise that money?
So in the contract, it says that the work has to be completed by October 31st, 2024. Though, because the scope of the work is pretty extensive, we asked, what if the restorer needs to take more time? And we've been assured that there is a mechanism to request an extension. But yes, the Folklore Society will be responsible for contributing any additional funds needed to get the work completed.
Thank you.
Imagine that, $40,000 to restore
Mhm.
what a new piano was.
Not that that's even acceptable.
Do they charge for country?
Crazy.
Is there a fee? Good question.
I believe there
There
is.
must be,
It's
yeah, 'cause we do charge
I
them.
think
believe
there's
there
a
is an
nominal,
admission.
yeah, there's
I
a,
believe it's a slight admission fee, but I
it
think
might
that's
be
more to
like
cover the individual
$10.
callers or bands they have that night as opposed to raise money for them.
Yeah.
Well, we could up the fee and then $20,000.
Put a can out.
What's your
Well,
bar?
they,
And then, of course, anybody that can use the piano, who's qualified to use the
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
available.
piano. And you have to bring good attitude.
Yeah, that's true.
That's part of it. Okay, all those in favor? We had a motion, yes?
Yeah.
Aye? Aye. Okay, well, thanks for that. Up next, Hilltop Drive and Outlook Drive, extensions off of Cranberry Meadow Drive.
So they're part of that subdivision. So Paula Roach of LR3 reached out to us. So as you may be aware, they put it in, developed Cranberry Meadow Drive. A couple of years ago, there were 3.5 residences on Cranberry Meadow Drive. Hilltop comes off of Cranberry Meadow Drive, loops around up to the other peak, if you will, the one further east there. Outlook Drive is further down Carley Road. It is a cul-de-sac that runs up in, I think the plan was in your packet. One is 4 parcels, the other is 5 parcels. And just for individuals that aren't aware, the process for naming the roads is the developer proposes names. We then submit those to the state 911, the Emergency Telecommunications Bureau. They look to evaluate, make sure the name is consistent with guidelines that they have. So for example, you're not supposed to use people's names for a road. You're not supposed to have, Mandy Way. And the second piece is to make sure there are no conflicts with other roads in the community. So for example, we would probably have never have another road in town that starts with Old.
Or Scott?
Probably nothing that has an L in it. Right, so things like that. So they approve these names and work with that. So we have since gone through, we have numbers assigned to the lots and so forth, and the final step is for the select board to approve the names of these roads. One thing I do not know, and Nicole may be able to speak to this or somebody else, my understanding is, same as Carly Meadow is intended to stay a private road for its lifespan. I believe the same is the intent for both of these roads also. But I don't specifically have an
Private
answer to that
meaning, the
question.
town has no
The
responsibility.
town has no responsibility
Correct.
for it.
Is that true of Cranberry?
Cranberry Meadow
Yes,
is,
it
yes.
I believe that was exactly how they presented it in the the planning board meeting.
For the subdivision,
Yeah.
okay.
Years ago,
Yeah.
even the original subdivision was presented.
Which was 40, 50, 60 years, and 70s.
No, it wasn't that long ago, but when they got the approvals that they're working off, it was in 2007 or 8, I think.
Now, Outlook isn't too close to Lookout. Do we have a Lookout
No.
Hill?
We look at Hill, yeah.
So is Miller Way considered a road? Street?
No,
Well,
It's just a driveway then?
it does have a 911 address, though.
What about Kent?
but the now
Yeah, but
address
it's
is
named
not Miller
Kent
Way.
Road.
It isn't?
No, it's a Grove Street address.
Oh, interesting.
That non-emergency telephone is a Grove Street address.
Oh, okay.
Kemp Road we could do because that other house is technically on Courier? or-
No, it's on, that one actually is on Kemp. And Kemp, and I don't know how Kemp got in, maybe they didn't recognize, maybe it's not a common enough name, like, maybe.
There's a
Your fault, you
list.
sat next to me.
I know.
Yeah, you sat right behind me,
Yeah.
Just one adjacent question.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
So there's going to be an egress onto Carly Road? Did you say there's?
So, Hilltop comes off of Cranberry Meadow Drive and is a cul-de-sac, and Outlook comes off of Carly and is a cul-de-sac.
I didn't know.
Now, at one point, wasn't the Heritage Commission involved in naming historic places? Like, isn't that
Maybe
something
historic,
historic
I
going
don't-
on
yeah.
up there? Nothing?
Not that I'm aware of.
No one in town's history lived up that way, but you say no more names.
Yeah.
Well, that's unfortunate.
I remember trying to get Morrison Road extended and how much fun that was for me.
Trial by fire.
Yes, Carol?
I have to agree with you, Outlook and Lookout. Super close.
Could be confusing.
Yeah, and Hilltop, isn't that the name of the golf course?
It was.
Nope,
Not
Not
anymore.
anymore.
it's not a road either.
Well, doesn't matter, but what's it called now?
Monadnock
Monadnock
Country
Country
Club.
Club.
Oh, okay.
What
Thank
the
you.
Retro.
Say it again?
They went retro.
Retro.
And that sort of stuff, usually, like when the fire department gets that, it's put right into GPS, or everybody just knows
We have, well,
where things are?
both. So when we get dispatched, for example, Hilltop would be dispatched as your cross street is Cranberry Meadow Drive. For Outlook, it would be your cross street is Carly Road. For Lookout Hill, it would be, depending which end of the road was, they either have Wilton Rd or, what was the other one? Cheney Ave.
Training.
I mean, I have to say, I listened to the recording on
Yeah.
They had the wrong name last night
Right.
of Cranberry Meadow.
And part of that was because the original call was not a 911 call. The original call came from the owner calling direct on their cell phone. So
And they gave the wrong address?
they just said Cranberry Meadow.
I see.
They
There was a
didn't-
fire at the end?
Yeah, the fire was on Cranberry Meadow Drive, 45.
Not there.
Yeah, so they did not, the original call did not, it was not part of the 911 system. The second call was part of the 911 system. So if you listened later on, they gave a cross street to Carly Road,
I
they had
read
the
that.
Red Road, yeah, that was when the second, and I don't know whether it was which one of the occupants called first. The one called directly from their cell phone, the other one called through 911.
And even with that information, you got there within minutes, so.
I moved on Old Street across from you. I kind of cheated.
That's a testament to you.
We got lucky.
That's your show. You live right across from Carly Road. I was like, whose fire vehicle is that?
Yeah, that was Lisa's house, we got married, so.
Well, but we can name them anything we want, right? Because we name the roads.
You could
You're such a pod star.
You could reject this name and ask LR3 to come back with another name, which we would then run through 901 for their approval and then come back to you.
So it has to be the developer's choice?
Well, no, but I mean, they, typically they're given the first option if they're the ones that are gonna do it.
And
you
they
know.
do own it
Yeah.
at this point, so yeah, it
Oh,
would be theirs.
Private road.
touche, well, there you go. You can't be bullies, all right.
If you want to add it to our plow route, then maybe you can have a shot at it. Yeah.
You've been up that road, you're gonna.
Does sound like
run.
Nobody here wants to add anything.
Any further discussion? Well, at this point, I would make a motion to accept the two new names of the new streets is that eastern part of town?
Yeah.
Hilltop Drive and Outlook Drive. Welcome to the Road family. Anybody else?
Second.
Second? All those in favor?
Right.
And then, we had minutes. Should I drag this up for 13 minutes?
Can I ask one more question? Who does the signage for that?
They gotta buy their own.
They gotta buy
Yeah,
their own.
they'll
You can buy
provide
them
it.
online, though. Yeah,
So we're not on the hook in any way, Jeff.
no,
But there's a standard size.
They do have to match the town's
yeah.
color and font size.
Looking all right.
Green, white letters. That's
Pretty much, yeah.
Counts.
Right.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve those minutes from December 5th and 19th of 2023. That's last year.
Old news, right? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Now what do you want to talk about?
Is
Tyler,
everyone here from budget?
Yeah.
Start.
can I make a recommendation, maybe that you acknowledge the passing of Mr. Morrow, who used to be a policeman in town?
Oh, Frank Morrow.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, well, thank you for reminding us. That is very tragic. And of course, we're all, our hearts are with their family, obviously. I didn't know the gentleman, but you
I did.
Yeah. And thank you for reminding us. Of
Because
course.
he was a policeman in Peterborough, correct?
Correct, yes,
Yeah.
he's a police officer.
14 years.
Wow.
14 years.
He was
Keith
the
Moran,
middle
Janie
school.
was security, head of
Oh,
security.
he
at
was
Longview.
resource officer when my daughter was there. How funny.
Yeah, thank you, Carol.
Here.
Thanks for reminding us.
They're the instructor.
Right.
Cut my hand down.
Okay. We do have a budget committee coming up, so stick around at 5:30 sharp. We have a new chair. It's exciting news. Well,
The budget committee?
maybe for him.
He's not here, yeah.
I don't see Rick here yet.
No, he's not. He's
not
not
coming.
back
Excellent
yet.
stand-in, though.
Oh, is he coming tonight?
I don't think
No.
so.
Rick wants
He's
her
like,
to-
sure, I'll be
Oh, so
chair.
Mandy's gonna,
I'm sure we'll be there for you
Yeah.
guys.
Love to be
all right,
chair.
well, we'll call you out. and Everybody get up here 5:30 sharp.
You've got 10 minutes to mow around.
Yeah.
So who's the new chair?
Rick Lesser.
Rick.
Yeah, for the CIP presentation.
Mandy's vice chair.
Leandra's gonna do it. She's gonna do it. She's gonna do the presentation, but I brought a clicker for you, and there's a laser even if you really wanna get fancy. And then I have printouts. If I don't turn pages. I am, well, if you, I love to realize the CIP is a subcommittee to the planning board. It is, by state statute it is. So a lot of times people are like, why is it?
No, why we
Finance,
December
yeah.
5th?
And it is. Lily and I do it together, which is great.
They'd be like, wait.
And we've chosen to select
Oh, individually elected.
They do that.
Side price, number 8.
I know, it's a little outside of the scope of what they're talking about right now. Yep, so we have to have at least one planning board member be on the committee. So we have Sarah and Gary. Sarah's been doing CIP for 4 or 5 years now, probably. Yeah, Gary's the new one. Yeah. And we won't say how much I've been doing. Because I don't know, I gotta go look it up. We could find that.
Oh, no.
It's a nice committee in that it has a planning middle.
Every night.
Yeah, it's like 6 or 7 weeks and it ends there. Yeah. 6 or 7 weeks straight pretty much and then you're done. So and then you come back and you're ready. Yeah, that's what we did. We recommend it. Yeah. Yep. There you go. I'll give Nicole the clicker USB so it'll work.
Well, it's already in the paper out there.
Okay.
See.
Quicker for Leanne.
186 kids. Yeah, it was, that was.
Like, it was like, nothing, like, it was behind a new wall. So
It was totally like $1 million. I was like, this feels really words that I didn't say.
Called David, I got one guy.
Like, it's just, I've never had that happen to me before. Like, I've never been so horrible in this way. Like, I mean, I don't, I had to say it wrong, and I had to have it be like words I had to Google some of the words. What? Because I was like, I don't know what that means. I would never say this. Yeah, I would definitely not say that something was a stopgap. I'm like, what is the stopgap? Like, I guess I understand it. Like,
All right, sorry, now.
so it was like, it was just,
Yeah, we were there for like 2 hours.
stupid. They didn't make
We're live. Thank you.
We still go 5 minutes.
I should work for IT. How efficient I am. Not yet. I think that there is. I just don't want to confirm it.
That's very
I'm almost positive it's September. No, it's okay. I wasn't either, and then I was like, oh, wait a second. She really wanted to do this in the spring of the school year. Yeah, and I think that that'd be great. I just can't yeah.
And we can get laid out.
You can't, actually. You can. So I think that there's enough money to cover it. I have to confirm. If there isn't, or if there's not, I have the ability to designate someone live. I just have to get.
But we 186
usually
kids.
she's if it was tens of thousands of dollars to start. I was actually really surprised. Yeah.
Did they do this right? It was a little concerned.
I said the same thing. I was like, well, if that's what they came up with, then so be it. Because I thought that they were going to do something closer to that.
They don't have to
You could sign that.
I don't remember that. Maybe it's that? Yes. Right.
probably start moving our way up there now. Oh, don't you worry. I definitely know that. Thank you very much, sir. And I have you to thank for that. Yeah.
I think because the chairman's not here.
Yeah.
No,
We're all, yeah, very little.
Assumed you knew.
I do, thank you.
I'm born. That's good.
Well, yeah, I have to.
And I know you were on
Does it sound laugh?
Christmas Eve.
Oh, jeez, I know. And then it's like you get punished for
Oh,
laughing.
yeah. No, not Christmas Eve.
It said December 12th. Day before Christmas. Christmas Eve.
I'm surprised the message was still there that hadn't rained off or something.
No, it's protected.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Takes a stone.
We're gonna leave an empty seat for Rick.
Is he still traveling?
He is still traveling.
It was a house.
Me too. I am too.
It's in the subdivision.
I know we're not doing it today, but I'm.
Kermit Drive off of Carter.
It sounds like we're doing February 6th at 5. Yeah, that, I had to go back through the emails. I had to read them all again because I was very confused. And I was like,
That's Saturday.
I might have the wrong date. It was like the first Tuesday.
This was busy in
Yes.
It was this morning.
started around.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, that was what she'd said in her first email, but she was like, let's skip today. Because everyone's getting caught up, and I was like, that's fair. I don't have time for this. But then when she said it first, oh, I got it wrong, like, you know, back to work break, and I thought maybe we're on, because I'm tonight, and I was like, ooh, I can't jump on. But then I
Modern construction is all.
I'm gonna wait to hear back from
So
her.
your second floor ceilings have good insulation. So
yeah,
got going.
I'm kind of hoping for that next meeting, we can kind of
So
go a little bit more of a mission. I get what we're doing, but what's our end goal of what we're doing? Because I feel like we're a little floundering.
first time ever.
Yes, I agree. So I was thinking about it on one of my drive homes, and I was like, well, what's our end goal with that? Are we trying to get 5 more towns to adopt it? Are they adopting something? Are we, what is the end result we're
Yeah,
trying
I
to see,
love it. I think
right?
that's great.
Or we just make recommendations for all, any town to consider? I don't know.
This picture, if you look carefully,
I guess possibly. Yeah, I scraped the circle like is it formal house where it's there's no lease agreement, but it is a sort of tenant landlord situation. There can be, and so he was saying, but there also cannot be, which makes it very confusing. So I was like, I don't want to hear anymore until it comes to us. I don't want to hear anymore, right? But
1.86
that's okay. Better off not having it today.
I totally.
Well, just down to 25-cent part. You know, somebody did put sheet metal screws in the whole 2 pieces of metal, and you know, it got whacked by the guy doing roofing, or you know, who knows, something literally. I don't mean to be, I don't mean to be facetious, but you know, somebody stupid, you know, 3 sheet metal screws.
Yeah, functions.
One sheet metal screw. They tap the thing.
So she came down with it. I'm like, she's a witch.
They always.
They don't know any different.
Come to find out.
That's why you're supposed to make screws in it, so that no matter what angle you get it at,
He's not surfaced, so.
kind of like you can actually down for a hot spot.
He was in driving really
smaller vendors, fireplace, I mean, you're all gonna be in there.
The next prospective buyers for $2 million.
Yes. Yes, it's really funny you bring that up because somebody reached out today and they were like, does Peterborough have Oh.
So it's, ABC brand stove, so they reset ABC, the low ABC is, you know, walkability,
So someone reached out and asked, well, she probably said, she said, I'm remodeling now. I said, no, we don't have anything that exceeds state standard. It was funny, because except for a few that are still in statute, are null and void, like having to sprinkler single family homes. And I was like,
You guys are brutal.
He responded back to that person.
Oh, yeah?
Maybe we don't
yeah, there's still a note in there too, which it says like that it used to be there, but it was rescinded.
Sorry, I'm supposed to be on liaison.
I wanted to see like that. No, I'm just saying.
funny.
Yeah, when he worked for Chelsea.
That's so funny.
And the guy who was
Oh, okay.
All right, hey, hi, 5:30. Welcome, everybody. Everybody ready?
Not surprised.
Are we all ready?
Is it all right if we start?
Everybody ready? Hello? Hi. Welcome back. We're going to reconvene the meeting now. It's 5:30. The Budget Committee has elected a new chair and vice chair and secretary. That's Rick Lesser, the chair, Mandy Sliver is vice chair, and Mary Clark is their secretary. And I'm going to hand the meeting over now to Mandy Sliver, who's going to chair the meeting this evening, and she can introduce the rest of the Budget Committee. Welcome, guys.
Thank you, Tyler. So tonight for Budget Committee, I believe we have up here, actually we have a couple members in the audience, Leslie Lewis in the audience, and Tony Parkhurst, and then Dick Reynolds, right? Carl Mabzino, Mary Clark, and Al Lenos. Absent tonight is Rick Lesser, our chair, so I get to the fine honor of chairing. Who am I missing? And also missing from the meeting tonight is Andrew Osterman. Thank you, Carl. So tonight we are going to hear from, and I don't know.
It's okay, we're going to start with the CIP.
Perfect.
Overview that's going to be presented by Leander McDonald. And then I'm just going to go through the things that we were working with as we put together the draft budget that you received last week.
I'm up.
Thank you. You are up.
I'm
First of the year.
I'm Leander McDonald, and I'm the chair of the CIP this year. And I'd just like to thank all of my members, some of whom are in the room, and some of whom are not. And also like to thank Lily Gilligan and Danica Malone and her staff, or we wouldn't have any numbers to present to you. I think most of you know the reason we do a capital improvement report is there's an RSA that allows us to have this committee, and the town gets to pick some of the parameters, and these are the parameters we picked, as long as it's a capital expense. And we start in early October, hear from the department heads, look at the schedule, and move on from there. Does anybody know? Fiscal '24 was interesting because I think we began to make the shift to capital reserve accounts and try to limit bonding. And you can see that we have last year, our new capital reserve fund for bridges, dams, and culverts, and we approved Cold Stone Springs project. As you know, there's things going on that we don't yet have information on, such as, the fire station and what's going to happen with the grant to the community center. So those numbers are not included because we don't have those numbers. This is a very interesting graph that I'm grateful to Lily and Carl for. And this is just a visual way of looking at what's happening to our long-term financing. We're, in the middle here, just starting to 25. These are our capital reserve funds in red, and this is our bonding in blue. Okay, and we don't have water and sewer bonds in this list because it doesn't affect the tax rate. So you can see that there's more capital reserve financing and the bonds are heading down. So this has been a goal of our committee, and I hope it will be a goal of yours. This is the first sheet that you saw, which is all the capital reserve funds. If you look at what's been happening, you'll notice that our bridge and culvert money, which was $237,830, is gone up to $500,000 going forward. That's reflecting the projects that are going to be covered in that. You'll also notice that there is a drop in the ambulance revolving fund numbers, and I assume is reflecting the reality of where we are. The other thing is, if you look at the fiscal 29, you'll notice that we no longer have our roadway system upgrade, which was our 10-year plan that we're working our way through. And I don't know, as we get closer to that, if there'll be consultation between DPW and you, whether that is going to be a different number, another project going forward. The next slide is all the bondings, including the water bonds. And as you can see, the effect on the tax rate, 2024 is 118. The end of 5 years will be down to 73 cents on the tax rate on bonding. And again, not including what we end up spending on other projects that are not in this. Then if you look at the bottom, that's the bottom number of the warrant articles we had and the bonding. So we are going to hit what we hope is a peak next year and then start to decline a bit. That's where we are.
Excuse me, Maggie.
Yeah.
Would you like questions while
You
you're
can go
presenting?
questions whenever you want, just raise your hand.
To what
You do have to speak up a little bit because I'm in the middle of pneumonia and my ears are blocked.
To what extent are the TIF funds available?
We'll get to that slide, I can go forward and look at it.
No, that's okay. But are they included in
The
these?
TIF funds are sort of in but not in, which is to say they don't affect the tax rate.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah. And there's some interesting things going on with the TIF, so when we get there, we can. Okay? Anybody else have another? Yes?
I do have a question, just a general question about naming. The GAR Hall parking lot, it's really not.
True, it's really not. That is though what we called it initially. Yeah, so.
Is it in there
So
in the
it's-
bond? Then you gotta leave it until it's over?
Oh, no, we could change it on your slide. You know, if you wanted to change it to Riverwalk parking lot or whatever you would like to name it. I think it just initially, when it entered the CIP, that was how most people were thinking about it.
Sure,
And I also think it wasn't confusing because it gave you a geographical location.
sure. Okay, fair enough.
I think you can do that along with the roads. Any other questions? We can always come back to the big numbers here.
What's included in the Union Street improvement or
Well,
infrastructure?
The Union Street infrastructure with all those, when we redid the road, not in the Robb Farm,
No.
West Peterborough area, but from there down to Union Street. You know, when we redid all the sidewalks, did that
Mhm.
central part around the playground.
Yeah.
That's an expensive bond and it's a long-running bond, am I right?
Yeah, that's correct. So that's a 10-year bond that we took out. Or
Might be a 15-year
might have
bond.
been 15, sorry, yeah, my brain just rattled. 15-year bond that we took out. It was I think it was $1 million project, if I'm remembering correctly. And it went from the main street, you know, the five-way intersection, for a mile out. So that got you past the playground, rebuilt that section, and then, but not quite all the way to where West Peterborough neighborhood work started, but a fair chunk of the way to there.
Okay, any other, you can always come back, yes.
That raises another question in terms of the bond duration. Is there a way to show that on this chart or something else to see how
Lily has
far
the
out?
info, and we have put it in the past.
Without stretching the chart.
But we ended up with these multiple page things.
But I'm saying, just
Yeah.
even a column saying.
We used to
this is
have a column saying when it was issued and how long it was. We could add that back.
Sure, and that is in the full debt service schedule, so.
Yeah.
That's.
So you'll
that's
get that.
available.
This is,
Is it only 10 or 15? Is there another duration in there?
well,
For,
let's see
For
the
the
longest
There were some
bond.
20s there.
there's some 30-year bonds in there, there's a 5-year bond in there, and there's
Yeah.
some, it really depends.
Oops, sorry, I
Depends
did
on
that.
depends on
The,
the project.
if you look at the, the fire station thing, that was that money that we obligated, and that's going to be paid off in '28. So that was only a 5-year bond. And you can see the town hall is being paid off, but I'm pretty sure that, well, we know what the library is, right? Isn't that another 5 beyond this schedule? Isn't it a 15-year?
I think it's longer than that.
Is it 20?
I think it's a 30-year. I think that's a 30-year bond, but
I
I
thought that
don't.
one was 20 and they backed it back to 15.
Oh, maybe. I don't remember. I know there was, oh, that's right, because it got refinanced almost immediately. That's entirely possible. Unfortunately, I don't have that sheet in front of me, so.
No, I know, I didn't bring my notebook
Yeah.
because I thought I couldn't juggle it while sitting on the chair.
Just a generic question, I didn't want the exact data.
From the audience?
Yes, sorry for such a stupid question, but two things. The Public Works garage and the fire station, neither one of those have had work done, but you've had to get a bond on them?
Well, once you've pulled a bond, you've pulled a bond. And so you have to start paying it back whether you've done the work or not.
And we are doing the fire station
Fire
work.
station
That's your
design
design money.
That's
Yeah, but
the
I
design
thought we
money.
only did $500,000 bond.
No.
We didn't? I should know this, I'm on the building committee.
So that's
1.3.
1.3.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
we're
you-
paying for something in the Public Works that we don't have.
But we've just signed the contracts with the construction manager for that, so that project is going to be getting underway very soon.
Okay, thank you. That's good news.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of that was because it ended up, it wasn't a super large bond, and so they were limited on what they could do, so there was more planning involved
Yeah, I see.
than there
that.
might have been if you were just building a building.
Yeah,
It's also a good thing we took out that bond when we did,
Yeah.
because it would be astronomically higher.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
paying a
sure.
lot less money now. We can come back, but any more questions on this sheet? while we're here?
So just to be clear about that, we received the bond money
Mhm.
that's sitting in our bank account,
Correct.
and we're starting to pay it
And we're
off.
paying out of it, yes.
But we haven't paid the contractors yet.
We are paying, we're
For
paying
the
some
Public
work.
Works.
Public Works, we haven't touched it yet, no.
I haven't touched it yet, but we're starting to pay it back.
Yes,
Is it sitting in an interest-bearing account?
yes.
Is the interest better than our?
It's not
I think
close.
it's, I actually think, I think that one actually might be pretty close. That might be, I don't think we're making money on it, but I don't think we're necessarily losing money on it.
That one was the cheapest interest got.
Yeah, we took
We
that
only
out.
make 4%.
Yeah.
We're not gonna end up paying it all back before we actually need the money.
We're gonna need the
Oh,
money.
we're raising it
yeah.
through tax.
Yeah, we're raising it through taxation, yes. Yeah.
Okay, it's all clear now.
Okay.
It's been processed.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
And I'm just going to quickly run through the detail and get to that TIF question the gentleman had. These are the individual CR funds. This is Adam's pool and fund that we're just putting 15,000 a year knowing we're going to have future expenses. This is GIS. We do a flyover or whatever that is every 6 years. And so we set money aside. I think this is one of our longest run funds. We've had this a long time to do this. So that's ongoing. This is the police, and as you can see, this is our first EV is coming in. And this reflects something that you'll see in all the equipment accounts. Equipment costs more than it used to. I can remember the years when we could get a cruiser for 30 and then, yeah, that isn't happening anymore. So you'll notice that the warrant article revenue is getting a little bit higher, and when we have a double cruiser, it's a little bit lower. So there's that. This again is the fire department's equipment and CRF. And again, spread out, but you'll notice that we're accumulating some extra money near the end because there's going to be another big purchase, like a fire truck or something coming along. So just looking at those numbers. This is Recreation's little fund that changed from last year. Remember, they thought they need 2 vans. They haven't put enough as many miles on their vans, so they're only getting 1. But the cost of a van, I think it was $60,000 last time, and now it's closer to 70. What is that? This is the big capital reserve fund for all of our highway fleet. And there again, the same thing is true. Higher prices for those big trucks going forward. This is, of course, the CRF we started last year, and you'll notice the first thing that's going to be happening is going to be happening this coming fiscal year, which is figuring out what's wrong with the Elm Street Bridge. And then we're saving up for whatever's going to happen on Pine Street, as well as the culvert replacement on Old Dublin Road in fiscal '27. So what's going to happen here in the out years, I guess we don't know yet. And I think one of the things that makes us feel more secure about some of these funds is one of the things that's happened in the last 5 years is all the supply chain issues. When you have a CR, capital reserve fund, if you, for some reason, the equipment doesn't show up in the appropriate calendar year, it doesn't have to go back in the general fund. You can still purchase the equipment. So it gives you guys more flexibility. And this is the one we were talking about before that sunsets in '28, which is the extra money we have been putting in the roads every year to get them up to at least a 75–80% level. And this is interesting. This, of course, is all our ground well monitoring. There was a settlement back probably when I was a much younger woman, and we don't have any more settlement money in there. So you notice the zero in fiscal '25. That's going to have to come out of general funds. And this is the general fund page. And there again, the regular information technology upgrades sort of spread out, assessing the library put in that capital expense even though it's being funded by them. And then a little bit more of recreation with the regular resurfacing of basketball and tennis courts. And then back down to the regular road paving, the 450 that is every year that we've always done a similar number to that. So, and then you see on the bottom, we're going to have to start doing the ground well monitoring ourselves, and then in '29, unless there's some other agreement, ball bearing isn't paying anymore either. So just to make you aware of those funds. And these are the new water and sewer enterprise funds that you're the ones who know about, because you're the commissioner. These are the various things that are happening. Now this is the TIF page, and you'll notice the big number that you see in there is this number, which is the Grove Street Bridge number. And up here, you can see the payments for the Main Street, the payments for the Main Street Bridge that they're paying out of the TIF. I don't say it's we, but coming out of the TIF. And then this Grove Street Bridge upgrade, and then the parking the next year. So this fiscal year, they're hoping to work on rehabbing the Grove Street Bridge with TIF funds. Then if you look at the South Peterborough, which I always think of as the Rivermead TIF, but I guess that's not accurate. There's quite a lot of things that need to happen, and you know about the water main, and that they want to redo that pedestrian bridge, and then whatever's going to happen on Powers Bridge Road is going to be substantial, and then finally making sure Morrison Road bridges. So that's in that. The West Peterborough TIF, you'll notice there are no payments going out in fiscal '25. So that's when it will be recommended that that goes into what I think of as an exchange traded fund, but an ETF. But it's not an exchange traded fund. It's a, tell me, Danica.
Expendable trust fund.
Expendable trust fund. So that money does not go back into general revenue and can only be spent in the district at your behest.
Is there that
And
much?
Yes.
I thought it was like
that's all my slides. I just wanted to say one thing. We're giving you real numbers, but until you work on the numbers, this is just a planning document. We hope these numbers that gives you a look forward informs those decisions you make, but you're the ones doing the budget, and we're very grateful for it. That's all I have, and I'll take any questions. Yes, sir.
So let's go back to where the TIF, I understand the TIF monies are.
Did I go too far? Yep.
Funds. If you go back to the general, or one of the earlier.
Okay, the general fund slide, which is about number,
There you go.
Bond slide.
and your question?
Oh, this is all bonded,
Yes.
but the TIF funds are paying for some of those bonds, right?
That's what's happening, yeah. So you see where it says downtown TIF, Main Street Bridge, GAR parking lot? Downtown TIF,
Yes,
Main Street Bridge, GAR parking lot,
right.
okay?
So this is how much money we owe on the bond.
That's,
How much of that is being paid
Offset
for,
by TIF.
offset by TIF funds?
that's all TIF money.
100%.
100%.
Yes.
That's all TIF money for the GAR and the
Okay,
bridge.
that was my question.
Yeah, so, yes, me.
And I don't know if this is a question that you can answer, because this is kind of more, it's about the TIF ones, the other slide. I noticed it said Main Street paving was one of the things that was coming up. I thought I remembered in a previous year that paving of roads wasn't qualified TIF expense.
Oh.
And I could be like totally not remembering that correctly, but I thought I remembered us being very sad about the fact that we
Well,
couldn't
didn't we
use.
pave roads in West Peterborough?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Road construction, reconstruction is a TIF
Okay.
approved expense.
Okay.
It's in the plans, so in all 3 TIF plans,
Okay.
it's included as a
Okay.
use.
I thought I remembered having a.
And then in
very sad
addition, they're,
conversation that we couldn't use that money for
they're
that.
going to be paying that capital expense not as a bond, but as from the TIF for the Grove Street Bridge. So,
And I can add a little bit of complexity to this conversation. So last week, yeah, you're welcome.
That's possible, but.
In the last couple of weeks, Lily, Seth, and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really make the operating budget, and take the capital out. And one of the things that we've traditionally done is when we have a TIF project, we've always run it through the budget, which has a tendency to really confuse the operating budget. You see these big numbers come in and then big numbers drop out. Yes, they're offset, but it becomes a little weird to look at. And so between the 3 of us having that conversation, we kind of had a brainstorm and said, what if we actually sped up the establishment of the expendable trust fund, not just for West Peterborough, but for all 3 TIFs, give each of them an individual expendable trust fund. Can we do it now while the
while it's
districts
still
are in
having money
operation?
coming in.
Yes, and so Lily said, well, let me find out. She checked with Bruce Knoyer, who's the head of municipal services at DRA, and he said, I don't see any reason why you can't run them that way, manage them that way. So that's something that we're going
Would
to be
that take
looking
a town meeting vote to,
set up the funds, but once they're established, and then every year it'll be just like every other capital reserve or expendable trust fund we have, we'll just have a warrant article that will move the money that's collected through the TIF billing into those expendable trust funds, and then selectmen as agents to expend can expend the money during
now,
the
how
course
does that
of the year.
affect the advisory board's role?
Won't, has no impact whatsoever. So nothing really changes except that it will clean up our operating budget.
Yeah, so you won't see this.
You won't see those
Why is
big-
that big number there that's being paid by
Exactly.
somebody
Right, and you
else?
don't see it disappear right away. You have to wait till
Yep.
age 64.
Right,
Yeah.
and then you look at the bottom line down here and you say, well, how can there be all these big numbers and this number
Yep.
is, if anything, going down?
Exactly, because we have those offsetting revenues.
Right.
So the selectmen voted in September to utilize TIF funds to pay for the Main Street Bridge bond. That has significant positive impact on the money that we need to raise through taxation, because now we're utilizing the TIF funds that are available for that. So, I mean, these are all really good budgeting tools. It helps people when they look at the operating budget, all they're really seeing is an operating budget if we're able to do this. So that's one of the things that we'll be putting into the warrant this year. So, something to keep in mind.
Great.
Yeah.
Leslie.
Yes, sir.
There was talk of a bridge, replacing or widening the bridge at Rivermead. I'm not-
That, if
Is
you
that
noticed
in
on
there?
TIF projects that we had going.
I might have to go there, that's why I wanted to.
I'm getting there. The South Peterborough TIF is,
Morrison Road Bridge.
yeah, it's the Morrison Road Bridge refurbishment. I don't know if it's getting wider, that I assume it's not
It's a fair amount of
totally
money,
been
yeah.
determined.
It's fairly expensive.
But it's on the fiscal 28 schedule at the moment.
Yeah, is that the one right after Bagel Mill?
Yes, yeah, the really
The
narrow
skinny
one that, I was on the planning board when they came in and said, oh no, we don't need this bridge to be any wider for our traffic.
Well, that was right before Rivermead too, so.
Well, that's what I'm saying, that we didn't have the TIF, but we didn't make Rivermead do any off-site improvements either, so,
Slows down.
there you go.
Leslie, you have a question?
Did you have another? Yeah, Carl.
Sorry, the other
Oh,
one.
Sorry, I know. So I'm just curious about this West Peterborough TIF, and honestly, I'm always a little confused by the TIF, so I apologize if this is a stupid question.
It won't
But,
be.
so we have this $2.4 million that's just hanging out there after FY '25. Are there any plans, like, can we use it to just always plow there, or can we use it for anything we want? To
Not
like,
anything.
Can we pave the roads out there and plow and do all those kind of
Maintain.
normal things that would come out of the general fund?
Yeah, we can use it, as we've been using it, to maintain the TIF district improvements. We'll be able to continue to do
If
that.
somebody knocks down another light pole.
I was gonna say, next time someone runs into a light pole, we'll be able to use the TIF funds to replace it with that if insurance doesn't cover it. I mean, things like that.
Are there any other things that besides maintenance that we're thinking about for the West Peterborough neighborhood?
I think we've really done pretty much everything there is to do out there.
If they needed to be redone, it could be used for
Yeah.
that. Hopefully, knock on wood, it wouldn't happen soon, but if they needed to be redone or upgraded, we could use it for that.
Yep. So the
No
monies will
plans
be
to
available.
spend.
That's
No,
in there though.
no. And I mean, it's great that we'll have that money there. I mean, really, $2.4 million, that's gonna last a long time.
Yeah.
So we'll actually every year just see that number decrease by some amount, minus the 4% interest.
Exactly, unless it's invested well, in which case it may grow.
Each year, we can add an extra 6 inches to each speed bump.
Yeah.
It won't cost us a thing to paint them, right?
But now, as of '25, those are back on the tax rolls at the 100% of whatever.
Yes. And then we'll have all the knock-on impacts, there'll be a reduction, there'll be an increase in overall town valuation, which means that there's a bigger piece of bread to spread all the taxation butter across, but at the same time, that also means that our share of the school bill will also go up, so, there's a little bit of a give and take there.
Which is why we just expanded the South Peterborough TIF in anticipation of the West Peterborough sunsetting. But also out of that 2.4 million, that can be when there needs to be sewer main upgrade or water.
If it's something that was
upgrade.
done, I believe it has to be something that was done through the TIF, when the TIF was in existence. I'm not sure that it can be a new project. So that's a good question that we may eventually have to really look into.
Well, when it sunsets, you're just not allowed to take that money and put it somewhere else?
You can, but if you do that, then you have to carve out the county, school, and state shares and distribute those funds.
If we leave it there, we
Well, I
can
got you.
spend it on
That's
us.
fine, enough said.
And there's nothing to stop us from establishing new TIF districts after.
There's a
August.
limit to the amount of valuation in town.
Yes.
Fresh off the plane.
And go sit up front.
Congratulations, Arnold.
Oh, thank you very much for making it here from New York City.
Condolences.
Well, congratulations for not being in New York City anymore.
So I have a question, Nicole, just to follow up on that, where you said we have to carve out, once the TIF district sunsets, we have to carve out the school, county, and education portion.
if we want to
we're
use it.
return to the general
General
fund
fund,
roles.
right.
So if we put it in an expendable trust fund, we don't have to do that?
Correct. So long
So
as it's.
expendable trust funds are set up the same as TIFs, that they are held separate from the?
Precisely, yep, so they have to be
Is
set
that
up.
true
with
of all
the
our
same-
other expendable trust funds?
They're all set up with certain guardrails. You can only use those funds for the purpose that they were established for. So town meeting, when they voted to set up expendable trust fund or a capital reserve fund. It had a specific purpose in that warrant article. When we go to put the expendable trust fund warrant article language together, we're going to essentially use wording that says, and to be spent in accordance with the TIF plan that was adopted by town meeting and, for the West Peterborough TIF, it was in 2008 and then amended in 2012, and so it can be used for those purposes.
Okay.
So whatever is in those plans, that's what that money's currently locked up for and will in perpetuity be locked up for.
So other expendable trust funds, we would not be able to.
Move them around.
That wouldn't be the same kind of thing, like there's no, because we have other expendable trust funds, don't we?
We do, we have many of them, and each of them has a specific purpose that they were established for.
And those monies are net of the county and state education portion though, right?
So they're all different, they're all net. So they're taxation that's raised through like every other tax dollar. So it doesn't follow the same kind of rules. TIF districts are really special in the way that they're funded.
Oh, I agree, that's why didn't realize that the expendable trust fund was able to follow that same.
Yeah.
That's the really special thing about them.
It
And so I
is,
didn't realize
yeah.
it could transfer to an expendable trust fund.
We thought it could be done. We didn't realize that it could be done while the districts were in existence, which makes it an even better tool. It gives us a lot more flexibility.
But the TIF values that are being put on that bottom line stop at 2026.
Whenever they sunset, yeah.
Whenever it sunsets, so
Right, but still.
that money is not raised in taxation.
Absolutely. Carol, you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to circle back to Bill's, Bill mentioned something about doing another TIF when this sunsets. Isn't there a limit on how much of that?
There is.
Yeah, there are limits, yeah.
It doesn't, it's based on the size of the town and the property values and so on and so forth.
Will be such percentage.
Yeah, but I thought that's why.
Annika can explain that.
But in this past year, we just expanded the South Peterborough TIF.
Right.
But we still have headroom, and we'll get whatever
More headroom
headroom
from
the
West
West Peterborough TIF.
Yeah, when that sunsets. So, I mean, if we saw another area of town where we saw a lot of development potentially coming, we
North
could use
Peterborough,
that.
Bose Farm Road.
Unfortunately, where some of that's already underway, we may not be in time to capture that, or we could be awfully close. So we're going to keep an eye on it, but it may very well be a little bit of a horse race to the line there.
Yeah, please go back to the general page. I would like to highlight something you pointed out to us. And I think it's pretty
This one or
impressive.
the one
Yes,
before?
that's exactly the one. Looking at the projected tax rate impact of the bonds. If we all recall how much this town has done in the last 10 years, and the major infrastructure improvements and buildings and things that have gone underway, and to only have an impact at its highest point, $1.14 on our tax rate, right? And then to see it going downhill, I think is really a testament to the fiscal responsibility of town administration and everybody that's been involved with making the decisions and the capital improvement plan committee. And I think it's really impressive. So.
And I always think of what Lily says with our capital reserve funds. We're getting the same project for half as much money as if we bonded it.
Yeah.
So it's just a good thing to remember.
Well, that's certainly true now.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was true 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, you mean when we were getting
When we were
2%
getting-
money for doing water and sewer?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But we have flexibility. We're a town that can change our
Well, that's
parameters, which is great. Any more questions for me? I could turn you over and let you have your real meetings.
I just have a question that I don't know if it's the elephant in the room or if it's, but are we gonna be able to see the same schedule once we have numbers for the fire station? To be able to see what the bond schedule
Plug
looks
them
like?
in, yeah.
To plug them in, so, okay,
But
because I thought that was the.
we just had no way, because we don't know
You
the
can't make up
financial
numbers.
things you're gonna do,
Absolutely.
and we thought,
Yeah.
putting an elephant on the chart would just
Yes.
confuse
Yeah.
people. so.
I just want to make sure that we weren't going to be creating more work for you. The committee obviously isn't done yet, that we might need to hear an
Well,
update
if
in a
the-
few months or a few weeks, rather.
We're actually technically, when we turn it over to you, we're done, but hopefully all the numbers will be updated when we're
Yeah,
looking at it again. So
thank you.
That's it. Yes.
Is it possible, or does it make sense to have a line showing the increasing assessments, town valuation of assessments as they go on? Is there any projection for that?
That's not in my pay grade. That's
I'm
assessing.
not sure how we would.
That there's a history to it.
You mean equalized
there's
evaluation
really no
where we
way
are?
to project.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we could project that.
Okay.
It's,
But the history would,
For example, like 5 years ago, you would have never been able to anticipate what happened with the assessments in the last 2 years.
it's so much of it
Can't.
relies on market value. Yeah, it's just,
That's the
and it's
point.
wild.
All of it is
Yeah.
market value.
Yeah, you could watch my house go like this. No, some of those 2008, I just went,
I know this, but I don't know that.
Right.
oh, you mean,
No,
of course you can go and look at all your neighbors on the nice little parcel viewer.
right, I'm not trying to pick a specific house, it's aggregate, the whole town's valuation goes,
That
starting
number
at
is
maybe
available,
23 or
but it's
22.
not, it's not something that we look at. We effectively have a tax rate, number that Lily gives us, but we don't look at the valuation numbers.
And also valuation in and of itself is a very complicated number because it really depends on what kind of valuation you're looking at and for what purpose. But we've been talking about TIF districts. When you go to set a tax rate, the very first thing you do is you pull all the valuation that's in a TIF district out to create that tax rate. So your true valuation is a lot different from what the taxable valuation ends up being.
Taxable valuation is the key.
Yeah, and so that moves a lot. I mean, for instance, just in the last year, the selectmen made the decision to capture all the valuations in the downtown TIF. The year before that, we made the change with the 2 years before that, we made the change with South Peterborough TIF. And next year, or the year after, we're going to be taking West Peterborough TIF and putting that back in. So you're going to see, there's a lot of jumps whenever you do that. And you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars worth of valuation every time you make a move like that.
Nicole, the other TIFs, do they sunset, or are there?
Yes,
Is
they
that-
all
do we know the
sunset.
years? Or are they established already?
Downtown TIF is 36, and South Peterborough, I don't recall.
It's 2028,
28?
I believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
2028?
I think it's 2028.
I don't think it's that soon. I think
We're
it's
showing
48.
going forward. I think
48?
It might be 48.
Yeah, that's the newest
Like
one.
5 years from
Yeah,
now.
it's
Yeah,
after.
yeah, I think they're usually 30.
We extended the greater downtown too.
That was in 2017.
Yeah, we did it at the same meeting, that we established the South Peterborough TIF, and then we extended downtown TIF.
They typically go for 15 years or so.
I think we tried to match up the downtown TIF with the Main Street bond.
Okay.
Any other questions for Leandro?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Give the clicker back. Thanks.
All right.
Oh, what's next?
It's my turn.
Needs no introduction.
So bear with me. All right, so here's our first, you've had the first look at the budget, the draft budget, so I just want to give you kind of an overview of what we were looking at as we were building it out. So I'll start with the relatively easy stuff, and that's on the expenditure side. We saw health insurance going up 5.5% this year. Workers' compensation has gone up 13.1%. That's relatively small dollars, but it does have a significant impact on the finance budget. Electricity costs went up 2%. For heating fuels, we're using the actual usage numbers with a look back of 5 years, and then multiplying that by the current rates. So diesel, it's $4.15 per gallon, and gasoline, $3.18 per gallon. And with debt service, you'll see an increase in the general fund of $112,437. That's, of course, the highway garage and the fire station design. There's also an increase, or there will be an increase, it doesn't happen this year, but in the water department budget. In the next fiscal year budget, you'll see Coldstone Springs showing up for the first time. So fortunately, because unfortunately, for this year's budget, it doesn't show up. Cost of living and merit, we plugged in a 2% COLA and a 2% merit. That's based on some estimates. I used a lot of references as I was trying to sort out what COLA and merit should be this year. Northeast CPI in September of '23 was 3%. Social Security's cost of living went up 3.2%. Local towns have an average adjustment of 4.6%. They, depending on the town, they'll use COLA and merit. Some will use just merit. Some will use a combination of those, plus they'll also have step increases. So when you look across all the towns, they had an average increase, which includes COLA, merit, and step, of 4.6%. The average COLA increase was 3.1%. The average merit increase was 2.5%. Other references I looked at was a couple of consulting firms do some large salary surveys, and they did, these two in particular do look-aheads for what are companies, responsive companies, projecting that they're going to spend in salary increases in FY25, or in the year of 2024. WTW survey showed 4%. And Mercier, which is, WTW surveys over 2,000 U.S. companies. They do a survey across the world. I was looking specifically at their U.S. survey. Mercier is a much smaller pool. They have over 900 respondents, but they have a lot more healthcare employers, which of course is relevant to us, certain sectors. They have an average merit increase of 3.8%. And so looking a little bit more into COLA and merit, we are again proposing a 2% COLA and a 2% merit. That's been applied to all budgets. The COLA is applied to every employee's hourly rate, and of course merit's assigned after the employee's been evaluated, and it's determined if they've met or exceeded the expectation and goals for their position. And here's that survey of the local area towns and how that's broken out.
Yep. So when you should probably know this. When you talk about merit, is it a cap per employee of 2%, or it's just a pool?
It's a pool per department.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
These rates are based on 2024 rates, right? Increases.
So these are these are the ones that any town is moving forward with in their budget right now. So
these are for forward budget.
Exactly. So this is what they're looking at in their budget. These are the towns that responded, to the email that went out in mid-December, it's like second week of December. So these are towns that responded so far. A lot of towns hadn't gotten that far yet when the email went out. But here's the responses that we do have. And you can see they're kind of all over the place, but we're all kind of circling around that 4% range for the most part.
I also remember from last year, it would be good to compare the COLA and merits from last year, because I know that we jumped ahead, and a lot of other towns didn't catch up to us.
Yep.
So you got to balance it in that regard.
Yep.
So if you could see those numbers, that would be great.
I do have I have the numbers I had in last year's presentation, so you could certainly, we could look at those.
Okay,
I don't think I have, it's different towns responded, this time than last time, so kind of depends on who did
Nicole,
what.
just to go back for 1 second.
Yep.
Did the merit increase column that's blank, is that because they didn't report, or they just don't have merit?
They don't do merit. Yep. So every town that responded does do a COLA. They don't all necessarily do merit. Some have a step increase. So it really depends on the community. They all have a different way of doing things.
And to piggyback on Bill's comment, I know that last year, like you said, we did like a bigger jump, but if I remember correctly, it was because the previous year we had 0 increases.
Well, we had a lower increase the previous year. We were trying to stay on top of, and we certainly were not the only town that were looking at those large numbers. There were a number of communities that were.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, like, if we wanted to look back at previous, maybe look at the past few years and kind of see the.
We were at like 5.5 total the year before.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there was some reasons.
But also put it in context with the fact that we did a lot of adjustment of salaries this year.
Yep. Yeah, it gave us a lot of capacity, and I will say that it worked. So the salary adjustments have worked. I think we've really stabilized. We're not seeing people leaving, especially not the rates that we were in some of the departments. And now we're just, we're still struggling with that same very small pool of potential employees. And that's everyone, it's not just us.
Do you feel like last year with the bigger jump helped us to catch up, or do you think that got us ahead?
I think it at least got us to catch up. I think we're at least where we need to be. As far as getting ahead, it really kind of depends on which department we're talking about. Unfortunately, public safety is still a major struggle just because there aren't the people to grab, you know? Yep.
I remember the discussion last year about the salary adjustments, when you just said the salary adjustments worked. Can you dive a little bit deeper into how that worked?
Sure, they worked in so far as the employees seem by and large to be very comfortable with what they're being paid. Not seeing employees looking for work elsewhere or leaving to go find jobs elsewhere. We're not cycling through quite so many, especially we were able to retain staff, for instance, in recreation over the summer. You know, we didn't have as much trouble bringing people in as we had the year prior. We didn't have as much trouble keeping them on as we had in the year prior. Public Works is fully staffed now, which is saying quite a bit. You know, I don't know if I can speak for you guys, but you know, I think that you're not losing staff anymore. You're retaining the staff that you do have over there.
8 or 9, yeah. Yeah, 8 or 9 on board, 8 or 9 new EMTs. We have one of our EMTs is transitioning to paramedic. Will be cleared probably March-ish.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And those promoted EMTs to paramedics are staying with us as opposed to leaving.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Nick Rubiano was another one who did the same thing.
Yep.
So they're not rushing over to the Cheshire EMS dumpster fire like they were before.
So it's been, you know, it was a lot. We did ask the town for a lot, but I think it really did go a long way, even really honestly further than I expected. So very happy with that. And I think the staff is really happy. They feel appreciated for the work that they do.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that someone's keys on the floor there?
That's mine.
Oh, they're yours.
Yeah.
She's not getting hungry.
All right, but
Carol leaving her toys around.
so here's the big elephant in the budget. It's the ambulance service. So we moved the ambulance service into the operating budget this year for a number of reasons. Almost all of them, you know, really, let me back up just a little bit. So I only describe just for everyone, and I know that you've probably all heard me talk about this before at one point or another, but just so we're all on the same page. The transfer program started as a pilot program with Mnt Community Hospital back in 2011. It never really stopped being a pilot program. We didn't have a contract with them, but when they needed to transport a patient out of Mnt Community Hospital to wherever they were going to receive definitive care, meaning they were going to receive an operation or be treated for a heart attack or whatever was happening, we were the ambulance company they would call first to do that. And it worked great for a long time, a very long time. The transfer program was always secondary to the 911 service, but the revenue that we would receive annually from the transfer program always provided a significant subsidy to the cost of actually running a 911 service or an ambulance service generally. So it was, to say it was a net positive was an understatement. It really helped the town run it with very little, and for many years, no cost to the taxpayer whatsoever. But the transfer program always operated with the excess staffing capacity that we had for 911 service. So we, for many years, had more than enough EMTs and paramedics. And so when those calls for transfers came in, we always had the people that we could put on the ambulances and send out to answer those calls. However, maintaining staffing since 2020 has been challenging, to say the least. Your emergency medical providers, your EMTs and paramedics have been suffering from extreme COVID burnout. Many, and this is industry-wide, and we discussed this a bit last year, they retired if they could, or they changed jobs. Some of them changed industries entirely and left emergency medicine. And we started having to compete not only with other agencies, but we also were competing with organizations such as Urgent Care, which would hire paramedics to, provide that 9 to 5 regular scheduled, come in, sit in an office and do patient evaluations without having to worry about weather or sitting in a uncomfortable ambulance for many hours on transports, and while still able to treat patients. And of course, low pay was a real issue. So that all that came to a head in June of this past year, and we were forced to suspend the transfer service because of staffing crisis. We simply did not have enough people on the schedule. And these gentlemen can tell you, we're not talking about just a few shifts that we were struggling to fill. We had hundreds and hundreds of hours that were unfilled in the schedule. And thanks to John and Chief Walker, they filled those hours mostly themselves. And so we did not go without at least 911 coverage at any point since June of 2023. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate what they did and are still doing. The staffing has been entirely focused on responding to 911 calls, and it put us in a position where we were no longer receiving that revenue from transfers, which is a shortfall of $500,000. Obviously incredibly significant. At the same time, of course, insurance reimbursements have been declining for many, many years, and our 911 call volume has been increasing. So, and to make matters worse, in 2023, the House Bill 373 was introduced. While it was eventually marked inexpedient to legislate, that bill would have made it illegal for ambulance companies to bill patients for the balance of what insurance companies would not cover, which means that we would have had, on virtually every call, suffer extreme shortfalls in the cost, between the cost of what was actually provided and what we were actually receiving in payment.
That didn't pass.
Fortunately, that one did not pass. However, while that bill was deemed inexpedient to legislate, 3 bills pertaining to ambulance service have been submitted already in this season. So you see those 3 bills here. HB 1081, which does require insurance companies to pay ambulances directly. And SB 409 increases the Medicaid payment. However, it adds conditions for payment eligibility, which are a bit complicated. But the one that I'm really concerned about is SB 407, which you see there in bold. The summary of that is that while it requires insurance companies to pay ambulances directly, they can pay directly at a negotiated rate or at a rate to be determined reasonable by the New Hampshire Department of Insurance. And none of us have any idea what that means. However, what we do know is that at this time, the head of the Department of Insurance is very sympathetic towards the insurance companies. In fact, came and testified on behalf in favor of HB 373 last year. So we don't believe that those rates would necessarily be fair to the ambulance services. So we're very, very concerned. And for those reasons, with all of the things that are up in the air, all the question marks, all of our concerns, we moved the ambulance service into the operating budget to give the ambulance service itself stability. Because as you know, if it's running out of a revolving fund, it can only spend the money in the revolving fund. Once it runs out, that's it. There is no money to spend. If we move it into the operating budget, that does give us more cash flow flexibility. That allows us to spend, as we do on many things. We're able to spend out of the general fund ahead of revenues. So especially where we're concerned about where we're going, it does give us a bit of a, a backstop and able to continue to run the ambulance service. So, in addition to that, we've also suspended the ambulance services CIP until at least fiscal year 2026, because losing $500,000 is not insignificant. That would have a serious impact not only to the town of Peterborough's taxpayers, but also the taxpayers of all the communities that we serve, because we fairly and evenly allocate the cost of service to us all. The revenue shortfall has also been distributed already to the towns that we serve. That was done this year. And we've moved the ambulance services expenditures and revenues into the general fund. Again, that allows us to draw from other parts of the budget if there's a dramatic loss of revenue. We are still leaving the ambulance revolving fund open to use in the future. And when we do bring the CIP back, we're going to run it out of the revolving fund. So that is the short of it, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions about this, whether it's tonight or when these gentlemen come back in a few weeks. Really just kind of wanted to get that out right up front so we could discuss it. Yep.
How are transfers being handled now? What is the process?
So Mnata Community Hospital calls any ambulance service that's available to do it. American Medical Response used to be doing a lot of them. They've cut way back due to staffing. Great Brook Ambulance will do some. There's Webster Mills, which is a private ambulance company that does nothing but in-facility transfers, will do some. A lot of people that previously would go by ambulance are going by personal car. And a lot of the ambulance transfers were transfers that were convenient because we were available as an ambulance. And one of the things Nicole didn't mention in hers is despite there was a lot of revenue for that, there were a lot of transfers we did not receive any revenue for because the insurance determined it was not medically necessary to have them go by ambulance. A lot of those patients now are going by a personal vehicle. If you're, and I'm using this generally, if you're essentially fine, you've got a problem, you need to go to Concord Hospital because you've got a GI problem and the GI specialist at Concord Hospital, they would send you by ambulance because you're at the ED, you're being admitted to Concord Hospital, the ambulance is available. You're ambulatory, you can drive, your spouse can drive, your insurance company would say, sorry, we're not paying for that. There's no reason why you got a $1,500 ambulance bill and no care was provided. A lot of those people now are going by a personal vehicle.
There's a mini industry of private cars that hire themselves out just to do that.
I'm sure there is.
There maybe always has been.
Yeah.
There is a service that the hospital uses that's a nonprofit too.
Yeah, they also use a lot of wheelchair now. They've been able to significantly increase the number of wheelchair, patients that have gone by wheelchair transport too. Again, those folks that may not be capable of their own transport, maybe they have a mobility issue, doesn't make it easy or safe for them to get out to a car, they can go by wheelchair van because now we have a very robust wheelchair service in the area also. Smart Ride, who was started actually by a Peterborough resident.
Another question following on that is, has the hospital increased its, or have they have any plans to increase their capabilities in terms of handling things here that would avoid a transfer?
I really can't speak to that. I know there are a whole number of factors that play into that from our conversations we've had with Cindy McGuire as the president and CEO, along with Vicki, and I was Logri, I apologize, I don't remember her married name now, the chief nursing officer. There are a lot of variables to that. I mean, it may be a situation where there's a patient who could receive surgery at Monadnock, but they don't have any beds available on the med-surg floor, so there's no availability for follow-up care. Maybe they have beds for follow-up care, but they don't have the surgeon available because the operating rooms are being booked for orthopedic stuff and they need something, so there are a lot of variables. The thing that folks need to remember, and we actually have somebody in the room who probably could speak to a little bit more, if she so chooses. Monadnock Community Hospital is a critical access hospital. Their mission is to meet a need for rural health care in our area. They do an incredibly good job providing a really robust suite. When you look at what they have for orthopedic availability, what they're doing now for oncology, the mobile integrated healthcare program they've got set up. They're doing a lot more than a lot of other critical access hospitals in the state. Unfortunately, we're in a pretty densely populated area that has a huge demand on that hospital. And I think that's a big part of the disconnect is what a critical access hospital is and what we have. I mean, you look at our ambulance service alone, serves over 13,000 people. And Monadnock Community Hospital's 22-bed hospital.
There's a limit to how many beds they can have and how long they can keep you. That's really, in essence, what a critical access hospital is. Critical access, it's just a stopgap to get you somewhere else for the most part. You're not allowed to stay more than 72 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. So Nicole, I just want to confirm, you had said you're going to move the ambulance service from the revolving fund to the operating budget, but then you're going to still have a revolving fund.
Yes, so operations will move into the operating budget, so that's all the day-to-day things. Salaries will be in there, diesel fuel's in there, regular maintenance and supplies, that's all in the operating budget now, because that's your operating. And then, but we'll leave the revolving fund open, and we'll use it like we use a capital reserve fund or an expendable trust fund. We can dedicate some of the revenues as they improve, hopefully, to go towards the capital improvement. And if not, then we'll look at another mechanism. But I don't want to close the operating fund. I don't see a reason to do that at this time.
You mean close the revolving?
Or the revolving fund, sorry, the revolving fund. I just don't see a reason to do that. Hopefully there will be a few dollars left in it at the end of this fiscal year. Yeah.
So when the CIP appropriates
Yeah.
CIP money, that money will just go into the revolving fund
It could, yeah, it can be voted into the revolving.
instead of a
fund.
trust.
Yeah, so, you know how we have that article, it's been on the warrant for the last few years, that, this past year was $450 some odd thousand that went to the ambulance service revolving fund. So we would just be doing that, but just for CIP, if we needed to do that.
So, and as far as the revenues that we get from the other towns, those just go straight into the operating budget?
They will, yes. Yeah, if this moves forward as we've envisioned it this year, that's exactly what will happen. That revenue will come into the general fund.
As with the insurance reimbursements.
Yes, all of it.
Can you review again which towns we serve and let us know if there have been any changes in the last year, and are there any indications of changes of towns leaving or entering?
So I haven't heard of any changes, but we serve Temple, Hancock, Francistown, Dublin.
And Hancock.
And
Sharon.
Sharon, Sharon's the one I missed.
No, Greenfield left 3
3 or 4 years ago.
3 or 4 years ago, and
now.
Temple came in.
Yeah, at the same time.
2020,
Was that long ago?
same year, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Another way of saying this is that we're adding the costs that we haven't been making in revenues to the operating budget,
Yep.
rather than having it be, like we have in the last 2 years, a warrant article of nearly the same amount.
Exactly. The big
So it's not
reason-
that dramatic of a change, because we've been spending pretty close to the money, at least on a warrant article,
It's gonna be bigger.
a little.
I can't,
Percentage-wise.
I
it's
can't
not.
sugarcoat this. We're adding, because of the loss in the transfer revenues, we're adding a few $100,000 onto what we need to raise through taxation. I really can't sugarcoat it. That's what we're gonna have to do to continue to run an ambulance service. Because we were bringing in $500,000 a year in transfer revenue to offset not just us, but also the other towns.
So some of that will come from the other towns?
Yes, absolutely. And we've already spread it out this year because we bill for 24 in fiscal year 24 in calendar year 24. So we've already alerted them that it's going to go up. They're already working it into their budgets for this year. And now we're working into our budget for fiscal year 25, which is of course the second half of FY 24 and the first half of calendar year 25. Sure.
So was the transfer service a bigger part, is it a bigger part than 911, I'm assuming?
No.
Fewer calls. It was at roughly 45% of the calls. But
Was transfer?
Was transfer, but it was about 65% of the revenue, 55 to 65 depending on the year.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking of the time involved in the fact that we have 5 ambulances that are now all dedicated to 911 calls.
It's one of the reasons why we suspended CIP. We don't need to buy, we're not going to need to buy another ambulance quite so quickly.
And do you envision, are you negotiating with the hospital to reconsider the transfer service, or is that just dead in the water?
It's staffing. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. If we have just enough people to run the 911 service, we do not have the excess capacity to also do transfers.
So are you trying to up the level so
Yes.
you can get back to the
Yes.
transfer service?
We are trying to get back to our previous staffing levels so we can meet the 911 demand. 911 calls have been continuing to increase as we've been struggling for the last 2 years with our staffing. if we are fortunate enough to get back to where we were, and we anticipate we will be once we get these folks on board and brought up to speed, then we would look at that. You know, do we have the capacity for that? One of the things, so we haven't said no to everything. If somebody in Manatee Community Hospital is having, they're having a heart, we call a STEMI, they're having a serious heart attack, they've had a serious trauma injury, and we have the staff, they absolutely go, well, that's, it doesn't matter whether you're having a heart attack at Manatee Community Hospital or in your living room, we're gonna take you to, Concord or Catholic Medical Center, that's going to happen. But it's sort of these, for me, it's easy to say routine because I'm not the family member of the individual suffering the medical problem. But for these routine movement of patients, that's what we really were struggling to do. And to sort of talk about, just to reframe part of what Nicole had said, one of the things that the other communities were very adamant about was that we clearly allocated out the cost for the 911 side and the cost for the transfer side so that they were not bearing any of that burden or that share of the transfers. So what we had done is all of our typical operating expenses, whether it's diesel fuel, electricity, maintenance costs, was allocated that 45-55. So we now have lost the ability to pay 45% of that out of this pot of money. So it's all coming out of one pot of money now. Which is where you're seeing that increase. So not only is it a loss of the revenue, but it's also a single funding source for those, to cover those operating costs.
And just a word on the impact on the hospital, just like all other healthcare sectors, they're suffering from low staffing. But now some of those staff are the ones who have to constantly be calling for transfers, finding, the various ambulance services, cobbling that together. So their resources are also being stretched by having no local transfer service. I mean, it's not like Monadnock's like, oh, well, no transfer service. So there is some incentive at the hospital to
fix the
work
problem.
something out. I mean, they can't fix it for you, but they certainly aren't benefiting from it either.
Of course not.
I mean, it's probably relatively important to mention, we can't budget on what we hope might happen. We have to budget for what we know. And if you do increase staff and the revenues start coming back in, that's something we don't know about. So you can't budget on hoping something changes.
Correct.
I'm not asking.
I wasn't saying it just to you, it's in general for everybody.
Probably your question.
Yeah, Nicole, I seem to remember further confusion. If the old system was for towns to pay to the revolving fund, and then when we put forward a warrant article for our share of the revolving fund, under the new system, we will put in the operating budget the entire amount of both, even though we expect some income. So the operating budget will jump up by larger than is real, because the state law requires to include that outside revenue as part of what you raise and appropriate.
Correct.
So the budget will look like it has a jump that isn't real.
21%. Yeah. It's a very big jump when you look at that bottom line of the expenditure
So we
budget.
had a sales problem, people understand.
So, exactly, and I mean, we had a sales problem last year too, and it's all about making sure that the people, who are coming in and voting, hopefully will have taken some time, learn about what's really going on. We'll hopefully look at, the presentation materials, go to the website, and see the net cost, which may increase. But it's always, we run into this problem a lot. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to move TIF projects, TIF capital items out of the budget, because you'd see those dramatic jumps and then dramatic fall-offs, So it has happened, not quite this much. I mean, 20%, I don't think the budget's ever gone up over 20% in a
Well, that's
single
the
year.
ambulance budget.
It's moving the ambulance budget into operating. So when you look at, the bottom line of the budget, and you take all of the revolving funds and all the special funds into account, you'll see that obviously the increase is much lower. It's well below 5% that we're talking about. The revenues will also jump because we're estimating revenues coming from the service fees too. So it's a little bit of both.
In the past, we used to keep a a column in our tables that said something about offsets.
Yes.
I think it's important that we keep track of, I don't think we're doing that in the last couple of years, but it would be important to keep in mind where we actually have some money coming in so we can properly represent what we're asking from taxpayers.
Yep. It definitely changed when we moved to BSNA because it's a little different how we're producing the budget now. But, if you look at, you do have to kind of put it together to see the actual net cost.
Are we increasing fees, or is that kind of a standard thing you can max out a certain?
Last year we increased fees because the CMS, the Medicare inflation rate is a little over 8%. This year it's 3.2%. I mean, we can certainly look at the fees, but, typically we get a very small percentage, of that back. I mean, the inflation rate is what Medicare applies to what they pay us. And the build rate so far exceeds what they're paying us. We're gonna get that 3% for Medicare, which is 60%-ish Medicare, Medicaid.
Yeah.
Of our patient volumes, around 60%-ish of that. And then the rest is private insurance, which, as Nicole stated earlier, pays you whatever the hell they want to pay you, when they want to pay you. So
Yeah, their negotiated
Yes.
rate with the New Hampshire Health Insurance Committee that's made up of health insurance professionals.
I think the term was reasonable.
Reasonable.
Now, one thing to that, though, and just to belabor it even more, CMS, which is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, is in the process of doing a nationwide ground ambulance survey. It's a multi-year survey where they split all the ambulance services essentially in the nation up and ask them to report both the revenues and their operating costs, because they realize there is a disjoint or disconnect between what they're reimbursing and what it costs. And there's also a huge difference in cost for an urban environment where you've got a 15, 20-minute turnaround time, and some rural areas where you've got 4 or 5 hour turnaround time. So one of their goals, and it's still several years out, one of their goals of this survey and this study is to be able to better reimburse ambulance services for the actual costs that they are incurring to deliver the services and transport their patients.
And the good news is that'll make everybody's insurance rates go up too. It'll all be offset.
They go up anyway.
Has there been any consideration to reducing the ambulance fleet because of the dropping of transfer service?
So that's one of the reasons that we postponed the capital, because in addition to the physical ambulance themselves, there's all the stuff that goes in them, which is a significant cost. So one of the things was to give us a chance to sort of flesh out what this model is going to be and get us back to there. We had asked to buy an ambulance last year, so we went ahead and ordered an ambulance last year. We were given a delivery date with a 2023 chassis. We've just been informed, or several months ago, we were informed if we're lucky, we'll have a 2025 chassis. So we're not in, we're continuing to go forward with that order because at some point we're going to need to replace the ambulances. That will be one part of the evaluation is where do we need for that? I mean, the one thing that I can, and Deputy Fay, John can back this up, we routinely have both of our current ambulances on the road. We also run into the problem that because we have 3 of our ambulances with over 200,000, over 100 and what, 200?
A4 is north of 240,000. A1 and A3 are both north of 210,000.
210,000. We have downtime issues with them. The other thing which we didn't have a problem with, which is coincidental, I have to blame Amazon for this, is the Mercedes dealer in Manchester. They do so much work on Sprinters. I mean, they're really good to us, but their Sprinter techs are busy all the time because Amazon runs literally hundreds of Sprinter vans, and they are the only Mercedes dealer that does Sprinter repairs in this part of New England.
So if we wanted to sell one of those 200,000 plus mile vans or ambulances, is there any value?
You've got a couple of cans of purple Krylon paint, we could probably convert that over. I don't know what the value is. One of the things we have looked at this gets us outside of that. Same as we refurbish the engines. One of the things we looked at is possibly re-drivetraining this. So new motor, new transmission, new drivetrain. What would that cost? What would it give us for life expectancy? Because the mechanical issues we're facing, our motors, transmissions, they're not the box where patient care happens. So that's one of the things we potentially looked at going forward, again, as part of that overall discussion that we're hoping to take the year or so to have before really coming back with a new capital plan, and again, going to the same model we have for the other departments now with that, the capital reserve fund, where you say, okay, we've averaged it out to $250,000 a year, we're gonna collect 250, I'm totally making that number up, please don't quote me, everybody. Where, and be able to average that out, so the years we have less, years we have more, it's that even amount. So we're hoping to take the next year or so to flesh that out through this transition.
If we just assume that going forward, we will only have 4 ambulances, let's say.
Yeah.
Has the new fire department committee thought about that fact that maybe we don't need room for 5 ambulances going forward? Maybe we only need 4?
I could ask the chair of the fire station building committee to speak to that.
Are you aware of that?
Well, no, I mean, I know that it was discussed even at one of the public meetings, and the architect was asked flat out, it's what would be the advantage, or would there be any advantage to reducing the number of bays? And I mean, our architect flat out said, I don't think that would be wise. So, and there are numerous reasons why he went on to explain, so. Yeah.
One of them's future growth
Yeah,
of the town in general.
Sure.
but no, but it has been, so thank you, yeah.
Another one.
And that is
A
important.
single ambulance isn't that big. They're really compared to the size of the bay that you would actually save, so. And again, if you consistently have 2 ambulances on the road, and we want to get transferred back up and running, I mean, you really need to have that third available, plus you need a third available for whenever, there's a large emergency, which does happen from time to time, or, mutual aid response to another town, which happens quite frequently.
Or an ambulance out for service.
Exactly, and you need to have those vehicles ready to go. You need mechanical backups, because you can't just rent an ambulance.
They're on the road all the time.
And they need to be available. And I mean, one of the most unpleasant pictures that Chief Walker's ever sent me was a picture of 2 of the ambulances on a flatbed truck at the exact same time going out for repairs, so.
And they bill us for both, even though it's only one tow truck.
Yeah.
Tow charge. I don't know how that works. We can only bill for one piece.
So it does happen. It really does happen, where we'll have 2 off the road and be, pulling those 200,000 mile plus vehicles out and using them.
And the 5th one is truly a mechanical spare. I mean, it doesn't have cardiac monitors, doesn't have the drugs, doesn't have a lot of the equipment that it needs. We really don't have the equipment for that 4th one.
And we're not even planning to store that one in the regular
Correct.
apparatus bay. That's going to be in the cold storage
The one
building
that's outside now
anyways.
is going to be moving to cold storage.
That answers my question, thank you.
So not that this wasn't a lot, but is that your whole presentation, Nicole? Are you good, or?
Thankfully, yes. I just wanted to quickly review the meeting schedule. I hope you caught it when I sent it out through 2 or 3 weeks ago, whenever it was, that we had made some changes to the lineup. The dates are all the same. The lineup's changed just a little bit. So next week, you'll see Police and Public Works, IT, GIS, PEG, Planning and Building, EDA, and Town Clerk will all be appearing on January 16th. January 23rd, which is New Hampshire Primary Day, we'll have Library, Recreation, Administration, Finance, Human Resources, Human Services, and other miscellaneous budgets. It looks like a lot, it's not that much. As you may recall from years past.
I'm just thinking on Primary Day, I was like, ooh.
Yeah, well, that's why we moved the Town Clerk to the 16th, instead of having them on the 23rd, which is where they would have normally landed.
It is still a lot.
Yeah.
And don't we
It
have-
doesn't just look like a
We have
lot.
our duties on.
You will have your duties, so if you, either one of you will end up missing this meeting, or you can appoint a selectman pro tem to serve in your place during that meeting time.
And count all those write-in ballots that people are going to.
I don't know that they'll want to stick around for that, but you never know. You might have a civically minded friend who wouldn't mind doing it.
We'll try to wrap
We'll
up
try
by
to be done
7
by
o'clock.
7, yeah.
So you guys can zip over there.
Shouldn't be a problem, though. These budgets are all coming in, if you've had a chance to look through the document, the budgets are all coming in pretty level. There's obviously some increases. Police has what appears to be a large increase, but that's really just because it's the fully loaded cost of a police captain. Remember, we had budgeted last year, or this current year, for 6 months. Next year, it's going to be for the full 12. So if you're seeing anything like that, it's probably what it is. Most of these budgets, they're not showing new services. Some of them are down. Library's down. Recreation, I'm pretty sure was down off the top of my head. And then you'll have finance and administration, were very boring budgets. The only thing really exciting there to talk about is going to be debt service and insurance, and I kind of covered that already, so there's not a whole lot there to really worry about. We'll spend a little bit of time on human services and assessing, because Ally's got all the exciting stuff this year to talk about in her budgets. And then on January 30th, pushed out as far as we possibly could, is fire, ambulance, and emergency management. We did that to hopefully accommodate a presentation or a pre-presentation of the fire station and its budget. Ahead of the overall budget analysis, completion of the budget on February 6th, and you'll see there's an awful lot of time built into the schedule in the month of February. So if we run into snow days, if it ever snows, or, you know, we want to spend some time, you know, re-examining some things and, you know, bringing department directors back for any number of things, we can certainly do that. But that'll bring us to the public hearings for the bond and the budget on March 5th. And then that will really wrap us up. After that will be April 2nd for the deliberative session, and May 14th and 15th for the ballot and the open sessions. Yes.
It'd be great if we could see the CIP slides again.
Yep.
With the fire in it, like either on the 30th or before we do this.
Absolutely. So that certainly something that we can add into that presentation, so you'll get a really holistic view of that. Can't do it now because we don't have the numbers back yet. We don't even have preliminary numbers yet, so we've got nothing really to work off of, but we should have those in the next week or so. And that'll give the building committee something to work with and make some decisions on before they bring it to the whole group.
Last year, we had the town, we tried to explain to townspeople the relationship with the town clerk and not being an employee, but
Yep.
considering a merit increase and COLA and that sort of thing. And we had a warrant article to give.
2 warrant articles,
Two
yeah.
warrant articles.
Yep.
Will we be seeing a warrant article this year for a COLA or merit increase that, or do you know anything? There
Yep.
wasn't anything in the budget, or we couldn't tell what the.
So the way that the warrant, there was 2 warrant articles, one that set the base for how the town clerk is compensated, including all their benefits and everything. That included a COLA amount, so that's fixed now.
Right.
So merit would be by special warrant article, and I haven't heard anything from the town clerk about that.
Okay.
You had sent us a document with this schedule at one point. Are
Yes.
you going to update that and resend it?
So this is the updated one. This has already been updated. What I sent you was already updated. I'm just
okay.
going back through it again and make sure everyone caught it after we made some changes to how it flows.
Can I ask, what sort of snowmageddon would there be that the people at this table can't get here for a meeting?
Well, so
We talking about 2 feet?
again,
What are we looking at?
knock on wood, it's never happened that we've had to postpone the bond or budget. But, you know, when we had, you remember a few years ago, a lot of town meetings were thrown into chaos because we had a 3-foot snowstorm.
I do remember that.
After that happened, I started getting a little nervous about it, so every time I post the public hearings, I always post it with a snow date, so just in case, we would be able to comply with state law and still be able to move forward with our
That was a great
hearings.
answer. Wasn't that last year?
Well, even if it's like,
March
say,
14th.
Public Works night, and if it is a foot of snow and Public Works is supposed to present, they're
Well,
probably not gonna make it.
Yeah, they're not gonna make
Yeah,
it, yeah.
well, also Seth isn't out there plowing, so.
Yeah, but he's.
Yeah. So, he won't even be able to drive out of here, it'll be so snowy anyway.
But it's been rare, but we have had, before you came on, we did have some snowy days where we ended up postponing or canceling meetings, so. It doesn't happen often, but it does occasionally happen where the roads just aren't safe. And that's it, we just don't want anyone out driving, including ourselves.
Nicole, just going back to the comment about the town clerk, COLA.
Yep.
Was that codified last year?
Mhm.
That
Yes.
she would, or she or he, whoever, will get whatever the town is getting?
Yes.
So a very year.
Exactly.
Okay, we just
Yep.
put a number.
Yep, so it's built into the budget already, so it's all set.
Only the merit increases require a warrant article.
Right.
Yeah.
But the COLA, like, I just want to clarify, the COLA was very year, but
Yep.
it's built in there.
Let's not go over how painstaking it was to go over that 300 million times.
I don't think we were gonna, but you just did, so.
We spent more hours on that than any of the rest of the budget.
Any more questions for Nicole? Her presentation before, we have one final thing, we just need to approve the minutes from our December 5th meeting, if everyone doesn't mind us doing that real quick. So the budget committee met on December 5th, where we elected the officers, and Mary, thank you for writing up the minutes of those. Everyone should have received those. I don't believe there have been any corrections. Do I have a motion to accept them? Leslie, second? Rick, any discussion, changes to the minutes? All those in favor? Sorry, Al, did you have a?
I have an odd question. We have one member that is not appearing at most of our meetings. Are there any rules about that you need to appear somehow?
I don't
Should
believe
there be a
so,
rule?
but being our first meeting, I think that some people may not have made it yet. So we've only had one.
There's
so
I will say, we
yeah.
did have communication from Mr. Osterman.
Yeah.
He's ill, so that's why he wasn't able to come tonight, but he said he was doing okay. My understanding is he's watching from home.
Yeah.
Just generally speaking, for
I don't
committees
believe so.
in town,
Yeah.
is there any
Elected.
process if there is an issue?
Elected is elected, so.
Can't be fired.
They,
You just don't get elected again if you
Can't be
deem that
impeached.
necessary.
Not for non-attendance.
Nope.
There's no mechanism for that. Malfeasance is really the only
Yes,
reason for.
if any, you
impeachment.
commit any crimes, we will have probably.
Misdemeanors, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, Rick made it all the way from New York City.
I was nervous, I thought, yeah, my first thing, and I'm already out.
Your first official
Okay, so
meeting.
officially, did we have all in favor?
Yes.
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 Okay, any opposed? No. Okay. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
That's my favorite.
Absolutely. Would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting? So moved. Leslie, seconded?
I'll second that.
Rick, as well. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Adjourn the select board.
You guys did
That was over at 5:30.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, you know it's for Rick.
Well, the lure of seeing.
Well, we have, we're fucking done with it, so I'll pick up Bill.